Good morning, guys. We're going to have a pretty independent day working. I hope you had a good weekend. You need to have your packet out, and you're going to start by doing the warm-up. The warm-up is found on page 8. You're going to do numbers 8 through 9. If you've already done it, you can go ahead and listen to the solution now. When you're done with that, you're going to do the notes for day 3 on your own, and this is how I'd like you to proceed with that. I'd like you to do it in sections. For examples, numbers 1 through 3. Do them, pause it, or pause what you're doing, go and look through the video and watch the answers, fix anything that need to be fixed. Then pause the video, go back and do numbers 4 through 7 on your own, then watch that part of the video, correct, etc. until you're finished. When you are done with the notes for day 3, you're going to go ahead and pick up the homework. It's in the red bin. You're doing decimal of the day review again. We're going to have an anchor on the decimal of the day on Friday. Remember that your anchor for this multiplying as scaling is on Wednesday. Tomorrow you will be practicing in pairs or in groups of 3, doing a practice quiz and doing an iReady practice and quiz as well. All right, let's look at number 8. Without multiplying, which bedroom has the greatest area? Explain your reasoning. If you look at the dimensions for bedroom 1 and bedroom 2, which factor is the same for both? Correct, 15 feet. Therefore, if we're going to compare the products, we have to compare the factor that changes for both, and that would be 16 feet changes to 16 and a half feet. Well, 16 and a half feet is greater, therefore bedroom number 2, because 16 and 1/2 feet is greater than 16 feet. And as a bonus, how much bigger would the area for bedroom 2 be? Well, it would be half of 15, 1/2 times 15, or 7.5 square feet bigger. Now, if I ask that question on the anchor assessment on Wednesday, it'll be a bonus question, so don't feel like you have to know that because you don't. That's going to be a bonus answer. All right, let's look at number 9. Without multiplying, which bedroom has the greatest area? Again, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to figure out which factor is consistent, and that's going to be the 12. And then the factor that changes for the 2 is, hold on one second, mixed numbers 13 and 5/6 and 13 and 2/5. Because or not 13, sorry, 3. Because the 3's are the same, we have to compare the 5/6 and the 2/5. So we have 5/6 and 2/5, and we need to compare them. Now, which method would we use? We would use 1/2 as a benchmark for this one. They don't have a common numerator, they don't have a common denominator, so we're going to look as 1/2 as a benchmark. 5/6 is greater than 1/2 because half of 6 is 3. 5 is greater than 3, so 5/2 must be greater than 1. 5/6 is greater than 1/2. 2/5 is less than 1/2 because half of 5 is 2.5, and 2 is less than 1/2. Therefore, 2/5 is less than 1/2. So our answer here would be bedroom A because 3 and 5/6 is greater than 3 and 2/5. To find out how much more, this one's a little bit more difficult, I wouldn't ask this one. You would have to find the difference between 5/6 and 2/5, and then the product of that times 3. We're not going to go ahead and do that. All right, go ahead and pause the video, and then I would like you to do numbers 1 through 3 in the notes, and then when you're finished with that, go ahead and start it again and look at the answers. All right, let's look at numbers 1 and 2. Now, your answers are probably going to be different than mine because there are an infinite number of answers. But if we're going to find three fractions that are less than 1, remember those fractions have to be proper fractions. They have to be a fraction in which the numerator is less than the denominator. So you can have a multitude of answers here. Simple one, 1/2. Or we could have, for example, 4/5. Or you could have 101 150ths. Just as long as the numerator is less than the denominator, you have a proper fraction, it's going to be less than 1. For number 2, name three fractions that are greater than 1. Well, what kind of fractions are those? Improper fractions. We'll abbreviate fractions this time. Or mixed numbers. Now remember, an improper fraction is a fraction in which the numerator is greater than the denominator. For an example would be, let's say, 6/5 or 1 3/7, or how about 8? Is 8 an improper fraction? Yes, because when you write it as a fraction, you'd write it over 1, and therefore it would have a numerator greater than the denominator. All right, let's look at number 3. What would happen to the product of the following multiplication problem if the change occurred, and explain your reasoning? If 25 times 31, if the 25 was changed to 27, so that would give us a problem 27 times 31. Well, the first thing we want to do is decide what the common factor is, and that would be 31. And then we have to look at the change. And if you look here, the change is comparing the 25 and the 27. Well, 27 is greater than 25. Therefore, 27 times 31 is greater than 25 times 31 because 27 is greater than 25. How much greater? Well, it would be 2 times 35 greater because there's 2 more, oh, not 35, my fault, 31s. Sorry about that. Greater or 62 more. Okay, let's look at number 4. Oh, actually, this is the point I want you to pause the video. I would like you to do numbers 4 through 7. And then we're going to come back. Actually, could you do 4, 5, and 7? Skip number 6. I don't like the answers given to number 6. They are kind of weirdly worded, and I don't like them. So just skip number 6. I'd like you to do 4, 5, and 7. And then once you're done with that, restart the video and go through the answers. All right, number 4. What would happen to the product of the following multiplication problem if the change occurred, and explain your reasoning? If 3 1/2 times 4 9/10, if the 3 1/2 was decreased to 2 1/2. So we could rewrite that problem as 2 1/2 times 4 9/10. The common factor is, for both of them, 4 9/10. And if you're going to decrease one of the factors in one of the problems, well, then the product is going to decrease. Because the product's going to decrease, we can cancel out A and B. And we just need to look at the reasonings in C and D. So for C, it says the product will decrease because 3 1/2 is 1 more than 2 1/2. And D says the product will decrease because 2 times 3 is 6. Well, 2 times 3 equals 6 doesn't have anything to do with this product because we're actually not even going to be multiplying 2 times 3. So the answer to number 4 is C. All right, let's look at number 5. Look at the expression 12 times 30 and 3 times 30. Without multiplying, which expression will have the greatest product and why? Again, your first step is to look at the common factor of 30. And then we're going to look at the factor that changed. And that's comparing the 12 and the 3. Well, because 3 is greater than 12, 12 times 3 is going to have the greater product. So we're going to cancel out A and B. Now, don't just assume. A lot of people in problems like this, because it's 2 parts, they just find the answer to the first part and select that multiple choice without looking at the answer to the second part. So if we look at C, 12 times 3, or excuse me, 12 times 30 because 3 times 12 is 36. And again, that has nothing to do with the final answer. The answer is 12 times 30 because 3 is 1/4 of 12, or 12 is 4 times greater than 3. That is the reason why. And so the answer here would be D. Again, we're going to skip number 6 because I do not like the answers given. And we're going to look at number 7. Without multiplying, which expression will have the greatest product and why? 13 times a third or 13 times 4/3. Again, the first thing we do is look at the common factor, which is 13. And so we are going to be comparing the 1/3 and the 4/3. To compare them, the method we would use would be a common denominator. Therefore, the greater the numerator, the greater the product. So because 4/3 is greater, we are going to cancel out A and B because 13 and 1/3 is not greater. But 13 times 4/3, is it because 4/3 is more than 1 and 1/3 is less than 1? Or part D, because 13 and 4/3, because 13 times 3 is 39. Again, we're not even multiplying 13 times 3. That has nothing to do with it. But if you look at the answer given, it wasn't the reason that we used to compare the fractions. But if you look at 1/3 here and 3/4 or 4/3 here, 4/3 is greater than 1 and 1/3 is less than 1. Therefore, the answer would be C. All right, I'd like you to pause the video and I'd like you to do numbers 8 and 9. When you're finished with those, please restart the video and we will look at numbers 8 and 9. All right, number 8. Compare the products of the, not toe, but two multiplication problems without solving them and explain your reasoning in complete sentences. So we have 45 times 40 and 45 times 36. Again, the first thing we're going to do is figure out what the common factor is, and then we are going to compare the uncommon factors. Well, 40 is greater than 36, so the answer would be the greater product, complete sentences, is 45 times 40, or A, because 40 is greater than 36. Okay. How much more would the product be? Again, this would be a bonus question. This isn't something I expect you to understand quite yet. How much more than? It would be 45 times 4 more than. Or we can do this multiplication in our head. 45 times 2 is 90, and then we're going to double that again since it's times 4, or 180 more. Okay? All right, let's finally look at number 9. Compare the products of the, again, 2. You can tell I copied and pasted the sentence. 2 multiplication problems without solving them and explain your reason in a complete sentence. So, again, the first thing we're going to do is figure out which is the common factor for both, and that would be 3.5, because it's the same for both. So we are going to be comparing 2 and 1/10 and 2 and 9/10. So if we compare 2 and 1/10 to 2 and 9/10, because the whole numbers are the same, we're only going to compare the fraction part of it, which would be 1/10 compared to 9/10. Because they have the same denominator, we're going to look at the numerators. 9 is greater than 1, therefore 2 and 9/10 is greater than 2 and 1/10. So the greater product would be B. B has the greater product because 2 and 9/10 is greater than 2 and 1/10. Again, you could find the answer to how much more than by taking 9/10, subtracting 1/10, which would be 8/10, and then multiplying that by 2. But it's a little bit tough, so we're going to leave it at that. All right, once you're done, go ahead and turn in your packets to your bin. Please pick up the decimal of the day homework from the red bin, and that's it. Have a good one.